welcome to the BALD TRUTH Leadership Podcast, the place where you got the no-nonsense, straightforward, no-holds-barred ideas on leadership growth, both personally and professionally. The BALD TRUTH Leadership Podcast is brought to you by the Peak Performance Group. I'm your host, Coach Rick Colster, certified executive business coach and the chief coaching officer of the Peak Performance Group, where we help people and organizations align and maximize their potential. Folks, today our guest is right in the middle of this epic pandemic we're currently experiencing. In fact, he is the CEO of a large medical practice right in the heart of the hotspot where it all began, Seattle, Washington. He's a strong leader and believer in servant leadership. He knows how to build a business and people. Welcome to the BALD TRUTH CEO of Frontier Dermatology Partners, David Fitzgerald, my good friend. How are you, Dave?
Great. How are you today, Rick?
We're rocking and rolling. We're here having a little fun. How's things in Seattle with this epic pandemic?
Seattle's great. It's been a little bit crazy with it starting here and then kind of going up and down. It was the center of the universe for quite a while. That center obviously switched over to the East Coast and landed in New York. But we got to be in the very beginning and figured things out kind of earlier than everybody else, which was good and bad. From a leadership standpoint, we had to get into it faster. We didn't have as much guidance, but on the other side of it, we're down. So our COVID count really is I think we're 23rd right now in the nation. So we're not quite not at the top anymore. Washington has really brought themselves down, but we were in lockdown for a long time, and it's been difficult on business. It's been difficult on people. It's been a rough time, but we're here.
I mean, let's jump in there. I've always wondered where I'm going to jump in. How about we jump in there? So as a leader, what scares you the most about what's going on with this right now? As a leader of a large medical practice, what scares you most about what's happening right now in our world, our situation right now?
With the coronavirus and all that, what scares me the most is one, that it comes back with a roar, or we can't contain it anymore, or what we have learned from it is wrong. And I think that's probably the thing that scares me the most is in the beginning, we were learning tons. We all thought it was, it's because you touched this, because your hand was on that, because you were around somebody. So, I mean, people wiping down their food, wiping down everything else. It isn't nearly as much the contact as it now. We're all wearing masks. None of us wore masks in the beginning. I talked to my medical director, and he said, if you remember back in the beginnings, us as doctors were saying, see, we're not wearing masks. It's not that scary. We don't need to be wearing masks around you. It's just like the flu. Well, now everybody's wearing masks and everybody's in the office, and so it's that learning process. And I don't want to have us caught without the right learnings, and I think that's probably it. So. That's
really something that's kind of fun to watch and listen is, what do we learn from this? I don't think we ask that question enough, is what are we really learning from this? And then what can we do differently in the future? Because I think with leadership, that's the one question I always ask all my clients is, what did you learn from it? And what will you do differently moving forward? So I think that's a great point, Dave. So what can we learn from this? And then how do we do something different in the future?
Yeah. And I think we do need to learn from it. I think we learned, if we're all business types and those of us that were trained in that, this just-in-time inventory, just-in-time that. And then when all of a sudden we had disruptions from China, from shipments, from our PPE, from all those things, just-in-time inventory was probably the worst decision we ever made, only at that moment in time. It's a good thing. We've learned that not everything is exactly the way it has to be. Just-in-time works when it should work, but you need to have a backup plan. You need to know what's going to go on. Like right now, we're all coming out of this and we're all rebuilding our businesses and we're all finding ways to get back to cash flow positive and building it. But what are we doing to prep for the future? So how much are we setting aside? What happens if X or Y? And I think maybe we're complacent a little bit as leaders, is that we what we'd learned was working, and it was working, and all of a sudden it didn't work, and we had to change. And I think that was it was good for all of us is to learn that you got to flip on the fly. You got to change what you're doing.
Well, that's a really, I love that observation. I came out of the manufacturing world 20 years ago, and we were just starting to roll out just in time. Because I worked out, I really wanted to have my inventory out on shelves. I wanted to manufacture and have stuff out there so there was always stuff to pull. But then we've shifted to that just in time because we wanted, literally warehouses were going away. And that as you said, came back to bite us in the backside a little bit, I think. And so now what do we learn? How do we maybe it's somewhere in the middle. I don't know. That's a really, really sharp observation. I appreciate that. And I think that our listeners will get that. So how can we as business owners, how can we as leaders now not overstock, but really have enough inventory in stock so we don't get killed? The toilet paper epidemic, the shortage of toilet paper. What the heck was that?
Exactly, but it's an example of that is there's a balance between the just-in-time, stopping at the grocery store every night on your way home from work for dinner, as much as there is in business of what's the carrying cost of that inventory is, no, I don't want to have the warehouse. No, I don't want to have boxes and boxes of gloves and masks hanging around. But at the same time, if I'm only getting them every single day, maybe that's the wrong allotment as well. What's that balance? And I think there's a new factor in that cost of inventory carrying. And it is for us at home. I hated buying the Costco package. Even if I had, we have a couple of kids at home, I still was too much. And I said, it's just too much to store. I can't stand it. It's just laying around. Yeah, that was a bad idea.
Yeah, that's so interesting to do because again, coming from a manufacturing world, we want to keep our machines rolling. So the just in time, but we also got to have some inventory out there. And we saw that back in the early 2000s when, 9/11 hit. I was in the manufacturing sector at 9/11. And all of a sudden, then 2000 hit, 2002 hit. And that was when we had our little crash in 2002. So we were jamming the supply chain. We were trying to jam the supply channel with product, but nobody was using it. So now we had an overabundance of product. So there's really an interesting balance we've got to think of. That's a great observation. I love that. So, all right. So let's shift a little bit. Let's take a shift in our conversation here just a little bit. Adversity. It's something that we all face in some way, shape, or form. I think every leader at some point in their lives is facing some sort of adversity in their life. So share with us, what are some of the challenges that you faced early on as a leader? Because you took a medical practice and built it to quite a large practice. In fact, almost $500 million in revenue a year. So growing through that as a young leader, what were some of the challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, thank you. I think every one of us as leaders every day faces adversity, and it's different kinds. It may not be a big wall or a force or something against you, but I've always said part of the title of CEO is boulder mover, is that you got to get the boulders out of the way of everybody else. And that's somewhat the adversity that they're facing all the time. And so what is your adversity as the CEO is what do you deal with? And some of the adversities that in this type of an organization that I hit were a lot of founder owners of each of the different companies. I mean, they are physicians and they do run their own practice, so to speak. So and who are you as a group, as doctors? You've got a doctor, that is a practice, that's a brand. You've got a brand that is your small group that functions in that same office. You may have more than one office added together. That's another brand. And all those frictions of how do we do business? How does it work for me in my 1-person practice, in my 5-person practice, in my 55,000, 100 practice? What works and what doesn't? How does it scale? And that kind of adversity, I think, was probably for me was one of the hardest, is to learn how to scale it and yet to say there's a different way of getting there. It's interesting. I recently took a different type of one of those leadership things as I moved into a different role recently, and you and I have talked about that, Rick. But with this different one, and I took a leadership kind of one of those. I don't know what you call it, but kind of what kind of a person I am, and that, and how do I make decisions, and around that. Before I took on the role, just so that everybody could work with me a little bit better, and we got through that. But one of the things I learned is that I've become, through working through that type of adversity almost every day for 20 some odd years, of having to balance different people's needs on that standpoint, rather than one driven goal, is that it's not the end goal. It's the end goal that matters to me, not necessarily the path. So I'm a little bit less critical than I probably ought to be sometimes as a CEO of what happens of others, because to me, as long as I'm going to get them to the end goal, it seems to work. And sometimes when you as a leader, it's not just the end goal. You do have to be a little bit critical of the path that you got there. And so it's this balance between the two. And I've learned that I overcompensate to just the end, let people find their own way because it may work better for this little group or that group. But sometimes it needs some direction. So me as a leader, I grew with that type of adversity, as realizing I overcompensated and had to try to bring myself back onto center a little bit.
Well, that's so interesting, because some of the things when I talk about leadership and we work on leaders, it's really looking at what are the methods that you get there and versus the results you get. We look at, okay, what's the methodology? And then as a leader, which is more important, the process or the result? And there's no right answer. We know that there isn't, because the process to some, and I think that's a behavioral, probably a behavioral assessment that you took. You went through to figure out who Dave is, and then turn around and go, okay, this is how I process things. And am I process oriented, methodology or process oriented, or am I results oriented? And what's that balance in there? And I think that's a true leadership trait, is finding where that balance is, demanding that you get the results, but also following the way you do it. And in medical practice, I think there's a really fine line you have to walk.
You do. And it is about the results in that. But, I also think that type of personality has fared well for me in now, where all of a sudden you have everybody in offices doing their work, and all of a sudden you have your diversified workforce. They're working at home. Yeah. People that you would have never had work at home before, taking the phone calls, managing everything that's happening is allowing, we've learned this through Zoom calls. And you've seen it. Everybody's seen it. All of us in business have seen this. The dog walks through the background. Somebody's wandering. The phone rings. Whatever's happening. But before, that would have driven us crazy. If somebody's phone would ring, or somebody's dog or kid had walked in your meeting, it would have been really weird. It would have done right. But now in today's world, it's not the process, the meeting itself. It's we got through the meeting and we got the results we needed. And I think we all have learned something in business and leaders, is that our people have lives. Our people have lives, and it's okay that they mesh just a little bit. And we measure more on results than we do on, they may not have logged in from 8 to 5 today. They may have had to juggle daycare because their spouse had meetings, and they juggled that, but they still got the same result I needed. And I think that's something we've learned. And so that personality has helped me during this time, but I also need to make sure I compensate for it.
So I love that observation, because we're watching Zoom calls. We're all doing Zoom calls. We're all listening and watching stuff. Heck, I was watching the news this morning, and the weatherman, our local weatherman here, he works from home, and you can see he's got his little dog bed sitting in the back, and his drum set sitting behind him in his living room, wherever he's doing his recording. And every once in a while, the dog will walk through the back. I mean, we've seen others where the kids walk up and go, "Oh, not now, honey, not now. Well, hang on, honey. I'll be right, Daddy. You'll be right there." And we don't. Before, we would have gone ballistic. How dare you have your child and you didn't have yourself squared away? But now I think you're right. We recognize that people have lives. And so that makes it a more interesting question for me, is, as I believe people are your best asset. Does it change the way that leaders are going to look at their people now because of this, what we've done, that we realize, by the way, they do have healthcare challenges. They do have lives outside of the workforce or the workplace where we are now. And how does that change for a leader?
I think it does, and I think it doesn't. I'm going to hedge my bet just a little bit on that, is that those of us who tried to care about our employees in the beginning, hopefully it didn't change it too much, that we actually didn't care that they had a life and that they needed to go to the doctor's appointment, or the kid had a child care issue, that we dealt with it before. Mm-hmm. So hopefully some of us, it didn't change it from that standpoint. But I think from another standpoint, as I hope it does understand, is that things are not quite as siloed as they needed to be. And so where I'm trying to take that learning is moving it into the job and into work itself, is that we could silo work and home life. We know that they mesh, but also maybe in some of our job functions and things like that during COVID, when you have to keep the engines running and you have to keep a medical practice open, but you're keeping that medical practice open at 15% of your patients. And it's really just trying to keep the doors open and then rolling through, like restaurants have had to do with with their carry out, but we had to modify, but our people did everything. Because if you're only running at 15% of your volumes, whoever came in basically did everything. They checked you in, they made the new appointment, they took you back out, they met you in the parking lot. So the lines crossed a lot of job functions in healthcare, and what we did during COVID. And now when I bring them all back to work is, I don't ever want to hear that's not my job, because we all figured out how to make everything was our job. Our job was simply take care of our patients. And I think this mixing of lives, realizing that we don't have silos of work life and personal life. We also don't have silos inside of work, is that things cross over. They just do. And I think our employees are learning that. And so I think as a leader, from that standpoint, what do we learn from it? Hopefully that, not only just being forgiving of those other little things, it's the answer back, it's not my job. It kind of is. Everything is. And so we'll figure it out.
And I think that's something we're learning out of this COVID, out of this pandemic, is how to balance that. We use, as you know, I use a process that includes what we call a life balance wheel. And through this, I'm starting to kind of change my perspective a little bit. And it's no longer balanced, because I don't think we can actually balance 100%. It's almost like trying to stand on one leg. For how long can you stand on one foot, or how long can you balance on a unicycle? I mean, I probably zero for me.
Me too.
But there's a couple, certain people that actually ride unicycles, but they're, and what they find is they're always moving. So I think it's not a life balance, as much as rhythm. So where's your rhythm go? And sometimes the rhythm slides into work. Sometimes the rhythm has to move over into your personal life. And if you try to separate the two, I think trying to separate the two really does a disservice to yourself, because we are intermingled individuals. We are one individual who have a personal life, but also are committed to our professions. I mean, the medical profession, bottom line, that's a purpose. That's purpose-driven in my brain. That's a commitment, because you're helping people. You're doing things for people. That's a servant right there. So, you've got to have a special kind of person to be a healthcare professional as well. And understanding that they also care not just about the patients, but they also care about their family and their friends and their other pieces of their life. And there's purpose in that as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
exactly.
If people are your best asset, and knowing you, that people, how much you care about people, and like you said, I'm really about results oriented. As far as methodology getting there, when you really care about your people, what does it take to build an organization? What kind of mindset do you take? Is it a process you can duplicate? Is it luck or something else? You've grown a couple of organizations. What do you think it is?
The way I look at it, and I was just brought into this one basically to build it as well. And the way I look at it, it isn't that you're building the business in that you're just trying to build it. If you grow for growth's sake, simply because you think that's where the return is, then you're not going to actually have a good business. And so it's keeping the right order on that statement of is that growth isn't your initiative, but all your initiatives cause you to grow. And the best way to actually succeed in your initiative is to grow. And so for us, it's do things right, treat your employees right, get the best physicians and providers there, find the best locations, make their lives better. If you can improve, you were just talking about how it is, it's a calling. It's a big piece of, these that are functioning in healthcare. It's huge. It is. And so if you can make their day better, because they have to document everything, they have to talk to every patient differently. Everybody's anatomy and physiology is different, yet it's the same thing every single day. Those of us that come in, right now I'm working in the dermatology world. If you're coming in looking at somebody's moles all day, you could act bored. And,
oh, yeah.
But you don't, because you have to find that other way to do it. But if you make their work so hard, then they could have that greater tendency. And so if you can make their life a better life and improve it, then all of a sudden, all those others that are out there practicing on their own, that are facing all those, that friction that in their life of their business of trying to run it, say, why don't I join in? Why don't I grow? Because the initiatives that you have done to make doctors' lives better, patients' lives better, all your employees' lives better through what you do through operations, then we want to be a part of it. And so that growth happens. So I focus really hard on growth and definitely want it out there. So we try to evangelize a little bit about what we do, but we have to do, or I can't evangelize anything. So it kind of comes down first that. So there is a chicken and the egg in this one. Is the chicken, the first thing is first, which is do it right and treat your employees right and do it right for the business. Then the growth happens.
I love that. We're going to document that. We're going to make sure we note that. Do it right and treat your employees right. And that's one of the things that's, as you look at a process, and making the process easier. I love what you said was it's the same thing every day for the healthcare providers who are looking at moles or whatever they do, and whether it's surgery or whether it's dermatology or whether it's any other or orthopedics, whatever any of the specialties might be. I can't imagine. I mean, I've had my knee done about a year ago, and he must see. I can't count how many knees and shoulders this guy does.
Exactly, but you sure wanted yours to be like you wanted him focused on yours, even though he may have done 10,000 knees during his career. You wanted the guy that had done 10,000 because he knew what he was doing. But on the flip side, you wanted to feel like I am the one right now.
Yeah,
so
exactly, and that's so. I mean, as I think as a businessman. Because you're a businessman as opposed to a healthcare professional. I mean, you're in the healthcare industry, but you look at the business side of it more, the leadership side, as opposed to what diagnosis
That's right. My passion
is
the business. Yeah, my passion is the business of medicine, not the practice of medicine. So that's kind of why I do what I do.
And looking at it from people, have you been able to, or what's been that secret sauce for you? Do you put processes in place, or is it focused on people? Is it a mindset, or is it something tangible?
Yes, it is all of that. There's no other way to answer that. You kind of put me to the corner there, but it is about your people. It is about the processes, because the processes work better if the people are happier, but they also have to know the end goal. And there's this balance and letting them know what the goals are and where it's tough. For example, during all of this with COVID and that, just on Friday, for example, we held we've held several, but we held another town hall for all our teammates on Zoom. And just whether it was your lowest level, front desk scheduler, MA, whether it's the doctors, whoever it is in the organization, join in. And we went through and we walked through, 4 or 5 of our financial metrics of where are we at? What did we just experience from a loss of revenue, from a loss of patients and visits, of deferred rent that now we're having to pay for, Yes, the landlords
Sure.
are great, but they also still want their money. And it's just like, what did we go through, and how much cash did we burn, and where are we coming out? Without saying too much as an organization, and they don't need to be down in the weeds. You don't want them stressed, but on the flip side, they need to know as an organization that A, you know what's going on, and B, you have a place to drive to. So it is the employees, it is the processes, but it's also the communication and the openness about it. So then we also talk about, hey, look what we're doing. We're merging everybody together. This group came together fairly recently. We're all getting on the same electronic health record. Our patients are going to have a better experience. Our doctors are going to have a better experience. We can get processes the same. We can learn from each other. And all that was part of that teammate town hall. And so it is, and that's why I go back to the answer. Yes, it is the processes, the people, but it's also the way in which you let them know there's a goal. Let them know there is a goal. There's method in what they're doing, and they're getting somewhere.
So I love that. I mean, I'm listening here and I'm taking some notes. Is employees, processes, communication, and goals. So the 4 key tenets for your success, it sounds like, is make sure your employees are right, are happy. Make sure the right processes are in place. Everyone's, we all have levels of happiness.
We're all people, aren't we?
We are, yeah. So, and then communicating, keeping an open door communication, and then letting them know and sharing what the objectives and goals are of the organization. And that's, I think, just sharing that alone really takes a lot of pressure off. Everybody's pulling the oars in the same, to use an old metaphor, the oars in the same direction. Everybody knows why they're pulling that oar at that certain time, because they know what the objective is, the end results are, the goals of the organization. I love that. So, and that's great takeaways for anyone listening, is look at your people. Make sure you take care of your people. Number 2, make sure you have the right processes in place, right systems or processes in place. Communicate. I'm huge on that as well. And then make sure that you share those goals when you have it. That's awesome, Dave. So setbacks.
Thank you.
Now, here's the thing. Setbacks and disappointments are all a part of leadership. We know that. So what mindset do you use to overcome that? And what ideas or tactics could you share with the folks listening that someone might be able to use to get a good mindset? So what mindset do you use, and what can you share to help someone get there?
Yeah, setback. I don't know that it's a lot different than what we just were talking about, which is we have to kind of get ourselves right, take care of ourselves when we have that setback, kind of assess and measure it, just like we did when you have it from from the business. You need to know where you're at and communicate back with yourself. Is what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Where are we at as an organization? What's that setback, or where did I go wrong? And is a personal setback, and then set some goals and say, okay, this is what I want to do. This is how it's going to be, and get yourself positive and be looking forward to that future with working towards it and setting those goals to get there. I do think this COVID time has made us all realize a little bit of that we all need those goals in life. I talked to my parents who are aging, and they have really done a good job of sheltering in place, 85 and 82, and they've done a really good job of just staying home and not doing those things. And we had to cancel a family reunion this summer, and we canceled it last week, and it was
that's gotta hurt
for them, probably the most devastating thing, because they've had nothing to look forward to, sitting alone, being home, and they're able to live on their own. And so they're in over 55, so somebody takes care of the yard. But those goals, if you don't have something to look forward to, it depresses you a little bit. So physically on that call, I got on with all my brothers and sisters, and we did a Zoom call so we could see each other, and canceled it. And yet we had to schedule the next one so that mom and dad had something to look forward to. And I think that's the same thing whenever you have your own setback, is create something to look forward to, create that goal, create that out there. And I think this time of hunkering down and all of us canceling vacations, canceling visits with your grandkids, whatever it may be, we realized those goals are important. And hopefully we could roll that over to the business side as well, and use that as to realize that we have to have something to look forward to, or we get stuck in the moment. If you're just churning through, it's hard. It's really hard.
Got it. And as you know, goal setting and designing goals and setting up what we call our GPS and our GoSat system, you're familiar with it. I know you are. And that's all a part of the coaching process that I use when I work with clients. And I had a question. I literally had this question: is how important are goals to your success? You just answered it. You didn't even have to prompt you. You actually, it's pretty cool because you totally answered it, because they're so important to have those goals, even personally and professionally. I think, and that's the key, is having something to look forward to. If it's a family vacation, I know for me, personal experiences, my wife and I are going to get away, and I knew that I was going to get away in July. I originally had a retreat planned, a 6-day yoga retreat planned at the end of July. So January 1st, I said, I better get my big old butt. I like eating over the holidays, and let me get down. So my goal was to lose 30 pounds between January 1st and July. I had a goal. It's still up my bar. I'm down 22 pounds already. Now I kind of slowed down because that retreat got canceled till next year. So now I've got to go back, and I'm setting it up. But having that goal for us as a business as well, when the pandemic hit, okay, what's next? What are we still shooting for? I think you actually nailed it there. So thanks for sharing that. So quick, we're running out of time. I want to be conscious of your time, because I know you've got a practice you got to take care of. A couple of things. Is there anything you want to promote for yourself? A shout out, something that's going on you want to share with our folks, and how can people get a hold of you?
Nothing really to promote. I'm not a book writer, and so I'll leave that to you and some of the others out there. But what do I want to promote is how to get a hold of me. It's LinkedIn is out there, and you can find me on that. A little bit the dermatology practice we're starting here in the Northwest is Frontier Derm Partners, and I'm out there on all those places. So Facebook, all that kinds of things. But nothing to promote.
Excellent, good. So if you're looking for an excellent dermatology practice, Frontier Dermatology Partners, you want to check them out. If you're up in the Northwest, that's Washington and Oregon, isn't it?
Correct. Yes, we have offices throughout those two states. And, again, the goals will be more than Washington and Oregon before I'm done here.
Well, I look forward to watching you do that, Dave. I sure appreciate it. So, and I would be remiss if I did not run you through the Coach Rick BALD Truth questions that every one of my guests gets to answer. And I really do it because we've talked about some really good stuff, but this really goes to the heart of who people are. So if you're ready, I'm going to throw 3 quick questions for you. Totally unprepared. You're going to be ready for this one. So here you go. These are the BALD Truth questions that uncover who you are. You're holding a dinner party for 6 people, yourself included. So you're one of the 6. What 5 people do you invite, and why do you invite them?
For me, I always invite my wife, and it's not because of anything else, because I like to share with her. But if I'm going to experience it, and I'm going to experience something pretty awesome, I want her to be able to experience it with me. It's just who we are, and because we live our life together, and so that would be a piece of it. And right now, not only is Seattle the epicenter of COVID, or where it began, we've got some other stuff going on here. We've got the epicenter of protests and trying to understand who we are as a country right now, and where are we going as a country. And we're truly an epicenter of that, and wending our ways through places that I don't know that everybody even knows what that means and what the goals are. I think there's a lot of things that people don't know what goals are, but other than awareness and justice and some things like that. And so what other goals are there? They're going to have to figure that out. But with that, where I would lean right now, just because of all that going on, I would like, some of the big leaders that we've had in this country. I'd like Martin Luther King. I would like I'd like Abraham Lincoln, and probably, strangely enough, I know they don't always see eye to eye, but maybe FDR and George Washington. And so my son just got back from a trip to South Dakota, and he saw Mount Rushmore just driving past it, going to his friend's house. And so it was, that's why that's kind of in my mind. But also within the country is, we were built on something. We built this country. How do we now make it better? And so those would be the people.
I love it. And that shows two things. You're a very smart man. You invited your wife. So it's a guy who's got experience being married. And number two, I love that we're an experiment. This country is such an experiment. And it is. And it's constantly evolving. And it's never going to be the same as when it started, which is the beauty of this experiment we call America. Yes. Yeah. So, all right. Second question is this.
We are growing.
An article's being written about you after you're gone. What's the title? Not what's in the article, but what's the title, the headline?
Probably my favorite headline of those, and it's pretty simple. That kind of tells you who I am. It says a good man. And I want to be a good man, whether it's for my family, for work, for friends, whatever it is. So, yeah, good man lies here.
Excellent. Cool. And finally, what do you do each morning to set yourself up for success? Do you have a system or something that you do, habits that set you up for success in the morning?
I continue to revolve those because you're always rushing and trying to do other things. But I do make sure that I go through my day. I plan it. How am I going to get there? To get from A to Z. And where are the gaps? Where are the times that I can actually improve? Make sure there are gaps in the day, so that not just for me, but it's what can I do now to drive the business forward and take those times that it's not just leading in a meeting, but leading the organization. So I always make sure that I've got some gaps in my day. Other than that, you think about your goals, you think about those things, and just start yourself off. My wife and I have been working on trying to decide, are we going to go meditate some, and we haven't got it done yet. Just rushing off to work.
There you go. Awesome. Okay. So, Dave, I want to thank you for being on the being on the podcast, being on the Bald Truth today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for spending some time with us. You know how we heard how people can get a hold of you, Frontier Dermatology Partners, David Fitzgerald on LinkedIn, Facebook. Connect with Dave. He is a consummate professional. He is someone that if you've got questions about how to build a practice, how to just be a better leader, I know that he'd be open to reaching out and touching base with you. So, Dave, I appreciate you being here, and thanks for all you've shared with our listeners today.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Rick. It was great.
All right. Folks, you've been listening to the Bald Truth Leadership Podcast with Coach Rick of the Peak Performance Group, the company that helps people and organizations reach their potential. If you're looking for a way to grow your organization, whether it's sales or strategic direction, the Peak Performance Group, our coaches can help you grow with our proven business acceleration process. Call us at 817-748-7425 or check us on the World Wide Web at www.mypotentialplus.com, and we will connect you with the right coach for you. Remember, subscribe and like below. We're available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, and YouTube video. Hit like and subscribe to hear every single episode, folks. Folks, it's been a big day. Love to have my friend Dave on. I appreciate it. I'm Coach Rick, and that's the Bald Truth.